Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here for another episode of CB's Gold MMA Show. Tonight, we are going to cover my predictions for the Ultimate Fighter 23 finale, Team Joanna versus Team Claudia. As you all know, that'll be tonight, July 7th, tomorrow night, July 8th. Tonight is Fight Night, Dos Anjos versus Alvarez on Fight Pass. Don't know when this will be fully uploaded, so it might be already started by the time you're seeing this, but we covered those predictions yesterday, so you can look out for those real quick. They'll always be up. Like I said, we're going to cover predictions for tonight, but we have one topic to cover, and it is the most pertinent, unfortunate news, I think, of 2016. Jon Jone has tested positive on a drug test as of June 16th of this year, which was about 3 weeks ago. He tested positive. We don't know for what, but he has been removed from UFC 200's main event against Daniel Cormier for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. It's very unfortunate. It's very sad. A lot of people are upset about this, and I'm one of the most upset people out there. I really wanted to see this fight. I was really looking forward to it. I thought Jon was clean again and everything was going well. Rumors were he was self-destructing in Albuquerque a little bit, but we don't really know everything yet. There's not enough time to test the B sample. As you know, USADA always tests the B sample to see if maybe they messed up or whatever it was. But with 72 hours until the event, or actually at this point, I think it's 48 hours. But as of last night, it was 72 hours when we found out there's not enough time to test that B sample and be able to clear him. So that has been removed as the main event. Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt is your new UFC 200 main event heavyweight title fight between the two. Brock Lesnar's big return. The things I'm hearing, Daniel Cormier will still fight at UFC 200. I know he was completely distraught last night. He's missing out on a huge opportunity to attempt to prove himself against the only guy that's ever beat him and to unify the light heavyweight championship and put Jon Jone out of his mind for some time. But like I said, Cormier will still fight. Not sure if it's a heavyweight fight or a 205 fight. There's a lot of names going around. Michael Bisping threw his name in the hat. Gegard Mousasi said he would like to move up. He already is fighting on UFC 200 on the Fight Pass prelims against Thiago Mareta Santos. I know that Uriah Hall had said something about it. People are saying Corey Anderson maybe. The heavyweight matchups for him, I don't really know. I think the two of the more relevant guys that would love to get in there real quick are Fabrizio Verdum. I know he has a fight coming up with Ben Rothwell, but I wouldn't be surprised if they moved him up if he could make it. You know, heavyweight, you have a 60-pound difference from light heavyweight to heavyweight, so there's a lot more room to make weight and make the fight happen. You know, Daniel Cormier is undefeated at heavyweight. That's where he started his career. Strikeforce Grand Prix heavyweight champion. The other name that I've heard thrown around is Junior Dos Santos. That would be also an amazing matchup. Dos Santos could possibly get a win against another AKA guy and see how that goes. But right now it's all speculation. I'm sure we'll find out either later today or tomorrow who's getting in with Cormier. I gotta guess he's still on the main card. Not sure it's for the title, even if it is at 205. But we'll see what happens. It's very unfortunate news. Jon Jone looks to be that he's going to get suspended for 2 years by USADA and the UFC. He did a presser this morning in Vegas, an impromptu, crying on the stage, saying, you know, this is not what I wanted, and I apologize to my friends, my family, my training partners, my coaches, all my fans. It's very sad to see this. You know, I kind of tweeted this out last night. I'm a Jon Jone fan, but it's real hard to be a fan of his in times like these. So I hope he gets his shit together. As Daniel Cormier said prior, we're waiting for him. Hopefully he gets another chance to come back. But, you know, this is many strikes, and Jon's been given a lot of chances. If he does come back, who knows if he'll get that immediate title shot. I'm sure he'll be stripped of the interim title, which kind of there's no need to have it anyways. Daniel Cormier is the champ, especially now. So we'll see what happens with Jon. We'll see what happens with Cormier. You guys still look forward to tonight's fights. Alvarez, Dos Anjos. You got Roy Nelson, Derek Lewis. You got Alan Juban and Bilal Muhammad. You got a bunch of great prelims on there. So look forward to that. Like I said, I'm going to cover in a second the Joanna Claudia fight card for the Ultimate Fighter finale. Just a quick update because I wasn't sure the finalists last night when I recorded. Two more finalists were decided last night on the last episode of the season of The Ultimate Fighter. Khalil Roundtree had an amazing slugfest of a first round with Josh Stansbury, and he ended up knocking him out in the end of the first. So the 205 final will be Andrew Sanchez against Khalil Roundtree. The female finale last night, Tatiana Suarez defeated Katie Jackson by submission. Beautiful mounted guillotine. First it was a standing guillotine, and Kate Jackson fell back, and Tatiana just kept torquing on it, and she ended up getting the submission very, very quick inside the first round. So Tatiana Suarez is in the main of the 115 girls finale against Amanda Bobby Cooper, who had won, I think it was a week or two ago on the episode. She ended up winning. So those are the finale fights. One more fight has been added to the card. There's two fighters from the season that have been added as a prelim on Fox Sports 1. Cor Hendrix, who you might remember, he busted up his foot in the opening round, and then he hurt his shoulder and his neck, and he went in, and the doctor said he should be fine, and a little time after that, he could barely move. So he said, it's in my best interest to drop out of the fight. He was supposed to fight, I think, Josh Stansbury for the finale shot at 205. So Cor Hendrix is returning, syndicate fighter, just like Khalil and also Jamie Moyle, who was on the season. He's fighting the guy that lost to Khalil on last night's episode, Josh Stansbury, who, if you don't know, was on The Ultimate Fighter a few years back, got injured, couldn't continue. So he tried out again, and he actually made it to the semifinals on that one. So that's a prelim that's going to be happening. But, yeah, so it's a real stacked card, great card. Let's go over the predictions. I know that in about an hour and a half, the Fight Pass Fight Night Dos Anjos Alvarez starts. So let's get through this. Y'all can watch this tonight or tomorrow before the finale, or the finale. And then tomorrow I will be doing my UFC 200 predictions. I'm going to wait and see if Cormier gets the opponent announcement so I can cover those. And I will be watching all of the Fight Night tonight, so I will be busy with that. Won't be recording. We'll be studying up and watching those fights. Looking forward to them. So we'll start at the bottom. We'll get started with Li Jingliang against Anton Zafir. Great welterweight matchup. I know Li Jingliang is he's been a tough fighter in the UFC. He's had 4 fights. He's gone 2-2. Before that he was in other organizations, but his first fight in the UFC was back in May of 2014. He fought David Michaud, who actually recently just won the Titan FC welterweight championship after Bilal Muhammad vacated it after signing with the UFC. And then he lost a split decision to Nordine Taleb. We know Nordine's a tough dude. Just knocked out Eric Silva. Was supposed to fight Alan Jobon tonight, and he ended up getting injured, so Bilal Muhammad stepped in. There's a lot of connections in these 3 cards with a lot of fights that have happened recently or circumstances of the UFC and whatnot. And then he knocked out Diego Lima, who actually fought David Michaud for the Titan FC fight for the welterweight championship. But back in September of last year, so it's been about 10 months, he was submitted, choked unconscious by Keita Nakamura. So he's coming off the loss. I'm sure he's looking for a nice win. Tough guy. He is he's one of the few Chinese guys in the UFC. But he's fighting a guy named Anton Zafir that's 7-2. He's had 1 fight in the UFC. He lost by spinning back fist TKO to James Muntazri, who we know is a real tough dude. Muntazri has been very flashy, and he trains in SoCal. I think he's a Black House member. That was his only fight in the UFC. Other than that, he's been bouncing around in organizations, never really fighting anybody with a huge name. But he has a grab bag of wins. He only has one decision, um, and he's got three TKOs and three submission victories. So he's a very well balanced guy. Um, it's tough to pick for this. This guy's an Australian, Anton Zafir. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Li Jingliang wins a decision against Zafir. Tough battle, fun fight to watch, but that's my pick, Jingliang. So we'll move on up the card a little bit. Next fight we have is a lightweight matchup. By the way, these fights are on Fight Pass. There's only 2 Fight Pass prelims for tomorrow's card. It's a little bit of a shorter prelim card because there is a 6-fight main card. Which is normal for an Ultimate Fighter finale, usually 5-6 fights. So the next one is a lightweight matchup between Jake Matthews and Kevin Lee. We know Jake Matthews recently because he defeated Johnny Case in that war of a fight at Hunt versus Mir card back in March. They got fight of the night. They were going back and forth. Just everything was going crazy with them. It was a great fight, and he ended up pulling out the submission with 15 seconds to go in the 3rd round of that fight. He also has a TKO of Akbar Areola. He has a rear naked chokeout against Wagner Hocha. Jake Matthews' only loss is to James Vick. Vick got a guillotine back in May of 15 on Jake Matthews. And we also all know Kevin Lee, very tough fighter out of Vegas, Drysdale Jiu-Jitsu, Extreme Couture. He most recently at 197 back in April had a decision win over Escudero, but before that he was knocked out after throwing that lead uppercut at 194 against Leo Santos. But it's Kevin Lee's had a good run in the UFC. His first fight in was a loss to Ally Quinta. Otherwise, he's done pretty well, but most of his wins are decision. He has one submission. Everything else is a decision. I like Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's a friend, so it's kind of, it hurts me to call this, but I think Matthews might be better in certain facets. I think Matthews is better on the feet. The wrestling edge will definitely go to Kevin Lee, but if he takes him down, Matthews got good submissions. He's got good movement on the ground. Very tough kid. I'm going to go with Jake Matthews. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a submission, but I wouldn't also be stunned if it went to a decision. So I'm not going to call the finish, but I'm picking Jake Matthews. And that ends the Fight Pass prelims portion of this card. We'll move up to our Fox Sports 1 card, where we start off with a middleweight matchup with Cesar Mutanch, who I actually used to train with back at Extreme Couture when Vitor was still there. This guy's like Vitor's little protege. Tough fighter, has had a few rough spots in the UFC. All 3 of his losses in the UFC were knockouts. And they were all pretty quick. They were all in the first round. He has a decision win over Daniel Sarafian. He has a decision win over Andrew Craig. And he most recently, back in April, got a decision over Olawale Bambos. It was his return to middleweight, actually. So it's interesting to see him back at 185. And he pretty much just grinded Olawale till Bambos ran out of gas and really had nothing. And he was taking him down and, working his ground game and his ground and pound. And he ended up getting a real nice decision. But he's fighting Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith is a very tough guy. He's one fight in back into the UFC. He's had one before. It was 3 years ago. Before that, he was in Strikeforce. He had 4 Strikeforce fights. He's been in Bellator. He's been in Victory. He's been in RFA. He's fought all over the place. And he's fought a lot of good guys. In terms of, what's been going on for him in the UFC, he won his debut in a Fight of the Night candidate at Fight Night Cowboy versus Cowboy, which was the Brazilian card, the Brazilian Cowboy back in Pittsburgh of back in February. That 170 main event between Cowboy Cerrone and Alex Oliveira. So he won that decision. Before that, in January, he knocked out Josh Neer, which Josh Neer's got a chin, good stand up. So this is a tough fight to call. Both guys are very good in the stand-up department. I think Anthony Smith might have a little bit more power in his hands. The grappling aspect, though, I would probably give to Cesar Mutanch just a little bit, just a little. Anthony Smith is good on the ground. He has a lot of submissions in his repertoire and in his victories. So I don't really know. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna go with Anthony Smith. I like Cesar Mutanch. I don't like how the UFC pronounces his name because most people call him Cesar Mutanchi. That's not how you say it in Portuguese, but oh my. I'm going to go with Anthony Smith. I think he can grind him, maybe knock him out, but I'm going to go with Anthony Smith, 3-round decision, unanimous decision. So next fight on the card is that light heavyweight matchup that we discussed prior between Josh Stansbury and Cor Hendrix, both from this season's Ultimate Fighter, Joanna versus Claudia. Corey was on Claudia's team. Josh was on Joanna's team. Both tough guys. Josh has heavy hands, some decent kicks. He was showcasing them last night against Khalil before he got finished. He's shown himself well in the season. Cor Hendrix, also tough guy out of Syndicate in Vegas, trains with Khalil, trains with Jamie Moyle, also trains with guys like Mike Pyle, Tom Lawler, Roxanne Modafferi, Vinny Magalhaes. I know Forrest trains over there still, Forrest Griffin. So there's a lot of guys he's been working with. Corey's probably better grappling than he is on the feet, but he still is a tough dude. Good chin. I'm going to go with Cor Hendrix. I can definitely see Corey getting a takedown, getting the submission. I think that's a definite possibility for him. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm going with Cor Hendrix. So Team Claudia could get that win back, even though at this point it's Team Syndicate because season's over. We don't really pay attention to who's on who. The next fight we have is a flyweight matchup. Former number one contender and title challenger John Moraga is back in the octagon. Hasn't been seen since May of 15 when he lost the decision to Joseph Benavidez. Before that, he had 2 submission victories, both in 2014 against Willie Gates and Justin Scoggins. But before that, he got knocked out by Dodson, and 2 fights prior, submitted by Demetrius Johnson, which we all remember from that UFC on Fox in 2013. Moraga's a tough dude. He's fighting Matthias Nicolau. He's 11-1. He's his only loss is to Pedro Nobre in Betetti Combat back in 2012. In terms of who he's fought, though, there's really no names under his belt. He did get, back in November, he got a Japanese necktie, which is a really, really tough submission to get on anybody, but he got it on Bruno Rodriguez at Belfort Henderson 3. But he's a tough guy, 11-1. It's an interesting fight, but I think he has some KOs, has some submissions, whatnot. But you know what? I'm gonna go with John Moraga on this one. I think he's the better fighter. I think he's more well-rounded. He actually does have really good submissions. He's got a good armbar that he likes. And by the way, Matthias is out of Nova União, so he is coming out of that Brazilian camp with guys like Jose Aldo and Renan Barão and those guys over there training under Andre Pederneiras and Marlon Sandro. So interesting fight. I'm going with Moraga. Don't know if he'll get the finish. Wouldn't be shocked. We'll see what happens. But yeah, John Moraga for the victory. So our next fight, which is the last of the prelims, these are on Fox Sports 1, debuting at featherweight after quite a few years of a tough run. Gray Maynard is dropping to 145. You remember Gray um, two-time title challenger to Frankie Edgar's lightweight belt. Unfortunately, his last four, he has lost at lightweight, 3 knockouts and a decision. Um, he's had a tough run. He hasn't fought since April of last year. Um, but he's dropping at 145. I always thought he was, a big 155, so it's going to be interesting to see him at 145. But he is fighting Fernando Bruno, he's 15-3. He's had one fight in the UFC. He got tapped back in August on the 190 card, Rousey Correa, against Glyco Franca. Before that, he only had 2 other losses. Not really a lot of names on his resume either. And it seems to be a lot of decisions that he has. A couple submissions here and there, but a lot of decisions. I trained with Gray for 3 years. It's tough for me to see him go out like this, even though he watched me go out one day when he threw a left hook at me during sparring, and I thought my head was going to pop off my shoulders. I think I woke up a few minutes later. It was nasty, but I've always liked Gray. He's a real good guy. I hope he does a little bit better at 145. If he doesn't win this one, maybe it's time to hang him up and just coach and do the whole wrestling thing. But I'm going with Gray Maynard. I think he can pull it off. Hopefully he doesn't lose the power, dropping the 10 pounds. Maybe he could knock out Fernando Bruno. I don't know if he'll get a submission on him. I'm going to go with Gray Maynard. Decision. 3-rounder. Good fight. Let's get back to form, Gray. I miss the old bully. So now we're going to enter the main card. Like I said, we got a 6-fight main card. To start it off, we got a 155 matchup between Joachim Silva and Andrew Holbrook. If I'm not mistaken, Andrew Holbrook was supposed to fight Sage Northcutt back in December, and he dropped out last minute, and that's when Brian Barberina stepped in to face Sage and kind of put a whole end to the luster of that. In terms of Joachim Silva, he's had one fight in the UFC, but it was back in September. UFC 191, Johnson Dodson 2. He beat Nazareno Malagari and ended up if I'm not mistaken, was Nazareno's last fight in the UFC. But he is undefeated. He's 8-0. Tough 155er. Has a few knockouts, few submissions. Only one decision, which was his UFC debut. So I like that. Andrew Holbrook is also undefeated, though. He's 11-0, and he's had one fight in the UFC. It was a split decision against Ramsey Najem, who we remember from that Ultimate Fighter season that he was a finalist and Tony Ferguson knocked him out in the final. And then Ramsey kind of had an up-and-down tough run in the UFC. Otherwise, Holbrook hasn't really fought like the biggest names as well. But all his fights, his first 9 pro fights were all submission victories, and then had a TKO and a decision. So that's really good. That's really good to be able to finish all those fights. All but one were in the first round, actually. So that's really cool. Don't really know a ton about, what could take place, what could happen here. The only thing I can say, of course, given somebody's no longer going to be undefeated, and I'm going to go with Andrew Holbrook. I think Andrew Holbrook can pull it off. I think he might be able to get the submission on the Brazilian. So I'm going to go with Holbrook. Submission. We'll call it second round. I'm gonna give him a round to prepare, get comfortable. I think second round submission. Andrew Holbrook, done data. So our next fight is a featherweight matchup between a heavy-handed striker named Duho Choi and a guy that's been doing pretty well at 145, Thiago Tavares. He's been in the UFC forever. He joined the UFC back in 2007 and hasn't left since. He's had a tough up and down. In terms of featherweight fights, he's 2-1. He got knocked out last June by Brian Ortega, who we know just recently beat Clay Guida at 199. So Ortega's nobody to mess with. But actually, Thiago Tavares also beat Clay Guida back in November. He submitted him with a guillotine in 39 seconds of the first round. So that's heavy. So it's a really good fight. Doo Ho Choi has in the UFC he's had 2 fights, both TKOs, but he hasn't fought since November of last year. Before that, all his wins were either knockout or submission, except for he went to decision 3 times. One was a loss, but he's 14-1, super heavy-handed. Thiago Tavares, if he stands with Doo Ho Choi, probably going to get knocked out. I just if Choi knocked out Sam Cecilia, Thiago's chin is not up there with Cecilia's, and he doesn't have the power to knock out Doo Ho Choi. So if it stays on the feet, I predict Doo Ho Choi to get the knockout. If Thiago can get the takedown, if he can get Doo Ho Choi down, I think Thiago can get the submission win. It will be a huge win for him. To go out on a limb here to pick one, I gotta go with Doo Ho Choi. I think he finishes him. I think he can knock him out. Doo Ho Choi's aggressive. He gets in your face. He throws, and he has fun with it. I like watching his finishes. They're fun. His UFC debut was an 18-second knockout. So the guy's definitely got power. I'm gonna go with Doo Ho Choi by knockout. So we'll see, but that's who I'm picking. Our next fight, which is the last fight before the actual finale fights, which is our 2 Ultimate Fighter finale fights, and the championship fight between Joanna and Claudia. So that's those are interesting fights. But the one before it, sorry, I'm a little fumbled for a second there. We've got a lightweight matchup. Ross the Real Deal Pearson is facing off against debuting UFC fighter, former Bellator champ who vacated the title to be released, Will Brooks. Ill Will is in the UFC. If you didn't know, here he is. Former lightweight champ, never lost a belt, vacated it, beat everybody under the sun. His only loss is a knockout to Syed Awad over 3 years ago. After that, he beat Syed Awad. He beat Chandler twice. He knocked Chandler out the second time. I was at that fight. It was unreal. I was going for Chandler. He got knocked the fuck out. Then he beat Jansen, and he beat Marcin Held in a nice little back and forth battle where his knee got tweaked a little bit because Marcin Held is a leg lock specialist. But he's facing a guy that a lot of people are already counting out of this fight, and that's Ross Pearson. Ross originally was supposed to face James Krause. James Krause had some family issues to deal with that are very unfortunate. I wish the best to him and his family and whatever's been going on with them. But Ross got dropped in the deep end once Will Brooks signed and stepped in. Ross won his last fight, split decision against Chad LaPriest. Arguably could have gone the other way. He's had a back and forth a lot of times. Certain decisions people thought he won, like the Diego Sanchez fight. And, it's tough to call, but Ross has been around since 2009 in the UFC. Tough guy, and I think he's a great stylistic matchup for Will. Ross has great striking, decent wrestling because he is an Alliance trained, so he is with, Phil Davis and Dominic Cruz and all those killers down there in San Diego. But Will Brooks, that guy he's real good everywhere. Very talented fighter. Like I said, the most recent Bellator lightweight champ. So we'll see what happens. But I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna give it to Will Brooks in his debut. I think he's trying to make a statement. He's trying to enter the top 15, work his way up towards that lightweight belt, and kind of give the middle finger to Bellator and Scott Coker. Like, I told you I could fucking do this, and you guys didn't give me a shot. Which, if you didn't know, Will Brooks went back and forth a lot on Twitter. Just, Bellator's not giving me a fight, and this is bullshit. I'm your champ. You got me on the shelf for a long time. His last fight was in November, and that's quite a ways back for a champion, especially in Bellator. But I got Will Brooks doing this one, and I think he's going to take it. So now we enter our finale fights. The first of the two finale fights from the season is the women's strawweight fight, 115 women's. It's Amanda Bobby Cooper, who made her way to the finals with real crisp boxing, decent ground, decent jiu-jitsu, but she is facing off against Tatiana Suarez, who has wrestled and submitted and done really, really well on her way to the finale. Um, you know, Amanda to get into the finals had a submission in the first round. Tatiana to get in the finals had a submission first round. But before that, Amanda beat Jamie Moyle by decision, and then Tatiana subbed out JJ Aldrich, which is a huge feather in her cap because JJ is she's she's a tough Invicta girl, tough fighter, real nice girl. So this is a really interesting fight. Both girls are very scrappy. Tatiana Suarez, I think better wrestling, better jiu-jitsu. Amanda Cooper, maybe a little bit better technical striking. Tatiana might have the edge in power. I'm not 100% sure. But Amanda's got power too, so don't get me wrong on that one. Both Team Claudia, which is interesting. So there are no Team Joanna finalists for the 115ers. They all got eliminated in the first round. I'm going to go out with Tatiana Suarez. I think she gets it done. I think she could finish Amanda Cooper. I don't see why she couldn't finish her. Submission, more than likely. Take her down, grind her, get in the position, get a submission. I'm going to give it to Tatiana. Second round submission. There's your new Ultimate Fighter 115er, and let's bring her into the UFC. Amanda Cooper's no slouch. I think either way, she may not get the six-figure contract. She'll probably get brought in. I hope a few other people from the cast get brought in because there's been some great fighters. I know Eric Spicely got brought in. He's fighting Sam Alvey, which we discussed a few episodes ago in an upcoming card. Tough fight for him after getting knocked out by Andrew Sanchez. And speaking of Andrew Sanchez, we're into the men's 205 finale fight. It's Andrew Sanchez and Khalil Roundtree. Khalil's the only one from Team Joanna to make it into the finals on either weight. He knocked out Stansbury in the first round. Unfortunately, he got subbed by Cor Hendrix in the first round, but brought back when Cor Hendrix became injured and couldn't continue. Andrew Sanchez, the elimination round, he won a decision against Myron Dennis, and then he knocked out Eric Spicely. It was nasty the way he finished him. It was early in the first round, just leveled Eric Spicely. So Andrew Sanchez, though, he's got power, but I think he's better on the ground. He's got better wrestling, great submissions, great jiu-jitsu. Khalil is more of a stand-up fighter. His gas tank is something that has been a little bit of an issue, at least on the show that I saw. I'm hoping that working with Syndicate for the last few months again, training, does him well, gets him a little bit more of a gas tank. Better on the feet, definite knockout power, hands, feet, anywhere he wants to strike from. I want Khalil to take it, but I think if Andrew's smart, he goes in there, he finds his distance, and then he gets within range, gets the takedown. I think he submits Khalil. Wouldn't be shocked in the first round, if not the second, but I'm going to go with Andrew Sanchez by submission. So that's my pick right now. Those are my finals picks. Team Claudia sweeps the finals as well. And you've got two new Ultimate Fighters. And so we'll see what happens. But my picks for the finals, Tatiana Suarez, Andrew Sanchez, both submission victories. That's what I think. So, the main event of the Ultimate Fighter 23 finale. And for those of you that don't know, it is on Fox Sports 1. It's a huge card. I think it starts at 7 o'clock Pacific time, so that's California time, on Fox Sports. We've got Joanna Jędrzejczyk defending her strawweight championship for a third time against Claudia Gadelha. If you remember, they had a fight a while back, a 3-rounder, went to a split decision. Claudia ended up losing on the losing end of that decision. That was back in December. She's only had one fight since. She fought Jessica Aguilar, whereas, Joanna since then has had three fights. She won the title and defended it twice against Carla Esparza, who she knocked out for the belt. She knocked out Jessica Penne, and then she got the unanimous decision against Valerie Letourneau back in November at UFC 193, the co-main event to Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey. If you've been watching the season, they've got bad blood. The press conferences, it's even more heated. There was that whole thing of after the camera stopped filming that last day when they announced everyone that one of them threw a water bottle at the other, and there was a fist fight in the gym, but nobody caught it on camera. I would have loved to have seen that. They've had a lot of beef, a lot of bad blood. I know the show portrayed Joanna as, the bully and kind of a bitch and whatnot, and Claudia as the sweetheart just trying to make it to the finale. I don't know if that's really how Joanna is. I've met her a bunch of times. She is a sweetheart. Claudia as well. Love them both. They're great, great fighters. This is a real interesting title fight, especially as a rematch. Last time was 3 rounds. This time is 5 rounds. Joanna's the champ, and Claudia is the challenger. But they're very good on the feet. I think Joanna has more power. Claudia maybe a little bit more technical, maybe not, because Joanna's just a heavy-handed technician as well. In the wrestling, we've seen Joanna has great takedown defense. Carla Esparza couldn't get her down, and I think Carla's one of the best wrestlers at 115. But Claudia's good too in the wrestling department. I think Claudia probably has better jiu-jitsu for sure. But I don't know if it's going to go there. They both want to just beat the shit out of each other. So I think it's going to stay on the feet a lot. For most of it, I don't know if Joanna can knock out Claudia. I don't know if Claudia can knock out Joanna. I would not be surprised if it goes to a decision. Wouldn't be surprised if a split decision. But because of my invisible point theory, unless Claudia completely dominates, which I'm not sure that's going to happen, I got Joanna by decision. Joanna retains. Not sure if the feud is over, but I'm sure hopefully at the end of the fight, they put their beef aside, they shake hands, they hug, and it was a build up, a lot of hype, and a great fight at that. So like I said, I got Joanna by decision. So those are my picks for Ultimate Fighter 23 finale tomorrow night, July 8th, 2016, on main card on Fox Sports 1, televised prelims Fox Sports 1, and the Fight Pass prelims, of course, on UFC Fight Pass. So, yeah, once again, I appreciate you guys for listening and paying attention to what I have to say. I should let you guys know I'm still working on sound and video and stuff. It's tougher than I thought it would be, but if you have any tips, let me know. It would be really appreciated, but I think we're doing pretty good so far. You can find this on YouTube. It is now also on SoundCloud and iTunes. It's under CB's Gold MMA show on iTunes. It is somewhat of a podcast now, so there's no video, but you can download it to your iPhone or iPod or whatever you listen to podcasts on, and you can listen to it in the car, at home, at work, wherever you want. You can also get it from SoundCloud, and then it's also on YouTube for the video. So, yeah, I appreciate it, guys. If you want to find me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, CB The Grenade. Facebook is CB Gold. Again, I appreciate all my listeners. I appreciate everyone's opinions. I will be back tomorrow to cover UFC 200. That'll probably be a little bit of a longer show. If I get Cormier's replacement, I will discuss it. I'm going to wait as long as I can to see what happens. But I'm not really trying to produce shows when the fights are on, and I know tomorrow's fights start a little bit earlier as well. So look out for the 200 episode, and then I'll be back the following week with a breakdown of the fights from the weekend and some new news if we have it. We'll be redoing the Q&A, so if you're watching or listening to this, send me some Q&A questions. I will answer them. We'll get taken care of, and that's really it. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoy the fights. Sorry about Jon Jone. Not my fault, but still it sucks. So enjoy the fights this weekend. Enjoy Vegas if you're there, and we'll see you soon.